Okay, welcome back. We're still in the kitchen. Kind of context for where I think the arts are, why the arts are necessary, why public funding for the arts is necessary, all of that. But back to the poetry slam. Another problem is one that I was discussing with a friend, and the way the pacing and phrasing came out just kind of nailed it for me. So I copied it, pasted it, reformatted it a little bit, and it is the first page of my new collection, Frost from the Wings of Valkyries, which I still haven't decided what the hell I'm going to do with that. This is just turning into a multimedia extravaganza. Yeah, you kind of get where I'm going here. You can't really interact all that much with a poem on one listen. And this is the context in which your poetry is to be judged, yes? Yes, it's a poetry slam. This is the context in which your poetry is to be judged. So anything that you pack in there that doesn't carry through in the first listen, that doesn't impress in the first listen, that doesn't deliver all of its oomph in that first listen, just doesn't count. So you don't really have a hell of a lot of incentive to put it in there, do you? No. No, you most certainly do not. And that is one of my primary complaints. And it needs to be understood that all of these complaints are kind of in the context of, this is why I don't read slam poetry, this is why I don't do poetry slams, this is why I am not a slam poet. I think that any medium needs to have more variety in it than would necessarily fit within the range of my personal tastes. So I am not saying that slam poetry is not a valid form of expression. I'm just saying why it's not a form of expression that I participate in. So there you are, writing for the context in which your poem will be heard, and perhaps for the context in which your poem will be judged. And again, if it doesn't carry through, if it doesn't, any oomph that isn't immediately digestible, just doesn't count. So you're not gonna put it in there. Or at the very least, you're not going to work your ass off in the process of putting it in there. Most slam poetry that I've encountered just feels really superficial to me. Really, really superficial. I have not felt compelled to go back again and again and again to a particular piece to tease out those elements that I didn't get on the first reading. I mean, granted, if a poem doesn't do anything at all in that first reading, you know, if there's just, that was nice. If it doesn't do anything for you, then there's either a problem with the poem or with the delivery. But if that's all it's got, you know, if that's all it's got, and I'm going to go back to first date analogies. You may have had this experience. I've had this experience, and it is always a real downer. I meet somebody who is so interesting. They are so interesting. Their views, their ideas, their experiences, their stories, they're just fascinating. And we talk for 3, 4, 5 hours, and it's beautiful. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Every second of that 5 hours is just brilliant. And then I realize that 5 hours is all they've got. The next night, it's the same anecdotes. It's the same speeches. It's the same perspectives. That's it. They've got 5 brilliant hours to say. And that's it.
It's very depressing. I mean, it's a damn it kind of experience. And that's how I feel about slam poetry. You know, it's a great first date. It's an awesome first date. But that's it. But that's it. And I do think it is because it was, because the conventions, the tastes, the aesthetic, the kind of stylistic guidelines around the subgenre grew up out of this this competitive context. You've got one reading, that's all you got. And I mean, it certainly seems to have deepened a bit since then, but even so, I don't see it entirely transcending that context. I don't see it entirely overthrowing the impositions of its origins. And you know what? I was having a fantastic conversation about this with my youngest brother a little while back, and he took umbrage to this position that I hold, as he often does when I start to sound like an elitist prick. And most of the time he's right. Most of the time he is right. And we're going back and forth, and I'm trying to explain what bothers me about slam poetry, and I just wasn't conveying it. You know, I just wasn't conveying it very well. And then hit on a metaphor that actually did work. And if you have no theatrical experience whatsoever, no experience in theater or film, this analogy might just not work for you at all. Imagine the visual composition elements of a stage show, a stage play. The lights, the sets, the makeup, the costumes. Also, imagine the emoting that the actors do in a stage play. Now make it a film. Lighting, costuming, performance style, and makeup from a stage play translated directly into a film. With the kinds of camera positions, close-ups, the intimacy of a camera that you have in film that you don't have in a stage play. People have experimented with it a little bit, but the results are definitely mixed. And there is no doubt that what you were getting is a very, very stylized production. And somehow the magic of theater and the magic of film get lost in those attempts. It's a separate thing, a different thing. All of those little expressions that we relish so much in film, that marks a master of the craft in film, are gone. They're gone in these extremely exaggerated performances that you have to do in theater in order for your face to not disappear in the lights, for your voice to not disappear into the sound system. Your face is somewhere between Maybelline and circus clown, so that your features are actually visible. Costuming tends to be built up, exaggerated in much the same way. Everything in theater is exaggerated, has to be exaggerated. And yet, in the context of a theatrical production, all of those exaggerated elements come together to create a very believable sense of life.
In film, it's gone about almost the exact opposite way. If anything, understatement. Play it as true to life as you can. If anything, film presents us with interactions with the characters and the actors more intimate than we would have if we were sitting in the room when those events transpired. Now, when I hear a poem, I'm fine with theater. I want a little bit of, you know? I want the makeup a little exaggerated. I want that vitality of performance. But when I sit down and read the poem, I want intimacy. It feels like, in some ways, it feels like the difference between two very, very different approaches to contact juggling. I'll provide 2 links in the crotch bar so you can kind of compare and contrast. In the former case, it's all about displays of technical ability. It is, I am doing something that is really hard and very clever. And isn't it cool? I'm doing something very hard and very clever. But in the latter case, the performer is doing something that is very hard and is very clever, but stirs something. They're communicating something. There's an intimacy in the performance. I just don't really feel any intimacy with or in slam poetry. I just don't feel that. I just don't feel it there. I guess I like to work in softer colors. And I guess for our for the last bit of a slice of life in this tirade, you're going to get to see what happens a few seconds after I sit down. Every time.
Hi guys. Hello.
So, I think we're done.